what I'm trying to do is everything I can to help parents end up on the right side of this equation, which is children that are creative, they are imaginative, they have agency, and they're connected with humans, right? Human connection. And it's a person that is not only vibrant, but also feels purpose and value in the world so that they can be an active participant in the world, right? That's where human beings shine, is when they feel like they're valued and they're doing something that is valuable within the world.
Caring for others is part of your life, but it's not all of it. This is your space for growth, confidence, and connection to the whole you. Welcome to the DaliTalks podcast. I am so excited to introduce to you today my next guest. My name is Dali Rivera. I'm the host of the DaliTalks podcast. Wylde Scott is an award-winning children's author, parenting advocate, and founder of the Imagination Project. His mission is to ignite imaginations around the world and help parents prepare their children for the world they will inherit. Wylde, thank you so much for being here on the podcast. I love the intro that you gave me to read out to our audience. I love the part of, preparing children for the world they will inherit, because it is absolutely true. And I just want to just tell everybody how incredible you are and how, the impression that I have of the work that you've done. But I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to get this imagination project idea.
Oh, thank you so much, Dali. Thanks first of all for having me on.
Of
Greatly
course.
appreciated. Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit of a longer story, but I'll try and make it brief. So I'm a children's author, and that's been my passion for a very long time. I'm a storyteller by nature. I write a lot of picture books, and I tend to write novels for younger children, the type of novel that might be the first thing they read when they actually can tackle a book. Very kind of what you might consider old Disney-esque. Those are the stories that I like the most. I'm a big fan of, Roald Dahl. I'm a big fan of Hans Christian Andersen, the great storytellers, the Brothers Grimm, everything that is just kind of natural for children to read and beautiful stories. That's my favorite. As an outgrowth of that, I spent a lot of time in elementary schools and in bookstores and doing a lot of time with children in their environments. And one of the things that came around for me was just really the way we had moved away from the imagination and play. And it's kind of a well-known, dirty, dark secret within all of education and a lot of parenting is that we've kind of moved away from this idea that children need to be free, children need to play, they need to laugh, a lot of these things. And as I was visiting a lot of elementary schools, two things came out of that for me. One, we don't do enough time with that. It became very rote learning, very memorization, sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. Everything that's not natural for a child is kind of what we've been up to. In secondary, I've spent a lot of time in different schools, and I ended up spending a lot of time in what we like to call underserved schools in poor neighborhoods. And there really is a difference. I hate to say it, it's just so true. There is a pretty vast difference between what I would call, very affluent neighborhoods, and I don't think it's anybody's fault. I just think it's a true fact that children who have a lot of resources, is the way I would put it, their experiences are much different than children who lack resources, right?
Right.
And so one of the things I noticed is there was a great difference, I think, in the mental frameworks that I saw in children from the various backgrounds. And I like to call it a three-generation rule, but basically, if everything around you is kind of a world of abundance, your parents are educated, your grandparents are educated, there's a very high likelihood that you're going to do pretty well in life because you're set up on a great scale. And it's quite the opposite if you come from a background where there's just not a lot of resources, not a lot of education, not a lot of people around you to provide the type of inspiration for you to have an amazing life. And what was interesting about the setup for me was that there's a lot of talk about what they call food insecurity and clothing insecurity and housing insecurity. We know these lack of resources, but I think what is probably the least looked at is the mental framework that is created in those environments and how they're lacking the type of maybe support and imagination is the way I would put it, to basically see a bigger, brighter world. And even if they see it, a lot of these children don't necessarily associate that big and bright world for them personally because it's not the world that they come from. So that was heartbreaking to me always in these journeys, and it became something of a core for me. So I started to write this book, and the book originally was about the imagination. That's what it was about, imagination and play, and being able to build those types of frameworks and empowerment, right? Building empowerment frameworks into the least served communities that says these children understand big dreams and they actually are being taught to believe in these dreams and that those beliefs are part of who they are. That was a big framework for me. What happened is, I would say something happened on the way to the forum, was I also started researching deeply in education and researching deeply in child psychology and researching deeply in the age of artificial intelligence. And what really changed for me and why I decided to write the book I wrote was the world that these guys are going to inherit, the children that are, between the age of 5 and 15 today. It will look dramatically different than the world we all grew up in. It's coming fast, it's coming furious. And for the most part, really most of society is kind of unprepared for what's about to happen. The transition is going to be huge. It will touch everything and it will be incredibly fast. And so what became concerning for me, as always, is the children. What does that mean for our children? And I've been asked that 1,000 times by different parents. Well, if this is changing so fast and their society is going to be very different, what should we be doing as parents to prepare them for the next generation? And that's exactly what I wrote about in this book, which is what is different about their world in 20 years, and what can we do now to actually prepare them for that world?
Mhm. Yeah, I love that you posed that question because I think that people are kind of thinking of that from the surface level, not really thinking deeply about how they're going to be impacted, not just in the workforce, because I think that's the main thing that people are talking about right now with AI and the way that things are going. It's like, oh, jobs. Okay, what about mental health?
Mhm.
Sense of self-worth, like
Mhm.
personal goals, adventure, being able to relax and have fun, and also family planning even because, economics and family planning also, goes hand in hand. Like if you if you're struggling, you're like, I don't even want to get a dog or a cat because I've got to feed it. So I appreciate that you have taken this mission because it's a big one, but I feel like you just deliver it so well. You're talking about those points in the book to help parents or adults, caregivers, think about what they need to shift to help their children and themselves. I think a lot of us are already being impacted, and we're not the young ones, right? We're already being impacted in different ways with the things that are changing, like you said, AI. But let's talk a little bit more about how you are implementing these ideas with the parents. I'm sure through the book, and also with the kids, because I've seen that you are doing just incredible stuff. I'm just
Oh,
blown
thank you.
away. And also,
Yeah.
like hence why you are dressed the way that you are. Can you talk a little
Yes.
bit about that and how you work with the kids?
Yeah, so my life is really children, and I think it's one of the greatest things, the greatest gifts of actually getting to do what we do, being a children's brand, a children's character, is that I get to spend a lot of time with children in many different environments. And one of the things that I like to say a lot is I get paid in hugs, right? I can't tell you what that's like when children you don't know who are 4 and 5 run up and hug you. It's the greatest gift in the world. Sometimes I'm jealous because my puppets might get more attention than I do when we go into schools.
Mhm.
But yeah, so the how is important. One of the things I discuss in the book is I would like parents to understand, first, I'd like to understand that there is a positive story here, right? There is something we can do. What most of the smartest people in the world are talking about is basically a 20-year transition, right? Everyone's predicting that there will be a lot of disruption and dislocation in the next 20 years. And human beings will have a very hard time dealing with that. Sometimes I feel absolutely terrible for the people that are between the ages of 15 and say 40, because that generation was prepared for something that existed in the 20th century. And very quickly, 5 to 10 years, that world will not exist for them. They will have a lot of hard time adjusting because why? Like you mentioned, we were all trained for this idea of a job. All we've done for the last 100 years is really most of our youth is spent indoors now preparing for an SAT score, a
Mhm.
college entrance exam, going to university, once you're out of university, the next 50 years are a job, right? Now, we've seen that kind of disintegrate in a lot of different ways over the last 30 years. No one works at a company anymore for 30 years at a time, right?
That's rare.
But the problem is that what's coming is so disruptive that the idea of a job is going to permanently change, right? So human beings in general will have to find a new way because we will not spend the majority of our youth or even most of our life preparing for a job, right? So the biggest challenge that comes out of that is the idea of purpose, right? What is our purpose as a human being? And what value do we present to the world? Because human beings are not meant, and I can talk about 1,000 different ways that this shows itself in the world today. We are not meant to sit around and do nothing. Any place where people sit around and do nothing, basically, it's not the society we want to live in. People wind up in violence and low education, all these terrible things from sitting around, not using their brain, not using their value in life, right? So for me, I'm trying to explain to parents that I see two very divergent worlds right now. And what I'm trying to do is everything I can to help parents end up on the right side of this equation, which is children that are creative, they are imaginative, they have agency, and they're connected with humans, right? Human connection. And it's a person that is not only vibrant, but also feels purpose and value in the world so that they can be an active participant in the world, right? That's where human beings shine, is when they feel like they're valued and they're doing something that is valuable within the world. The challenge we have with artificial intelligence is actually the better it gets, probably the worse the problem gets, because if AI is providing all of these wonderful things, we've already seen the damage that is done to society based on addiction to cell phones, as an example, right? So we're all used to the experience of walking into a room, and it can be a restaurant, a Starbucks, anywhere you go, and everybody's staring down into a phone. People are not talking, people are not communicating. In fact, we just saw an entire generation that they're more comfortable communicating through a portal. It is actually their closest connection to the world is through a 3x5 portal. They're less comfortable looking up and talking in the world around them and doing these things. Well, if AI is 10 times more powerful and it provides a world that's even, let's say, more convenient, right? Which is you don't ever have to leave the house. Let's say that world is truly abundant. They establish some sort of universal basic income. We can all sit at home and we can all watch the telly for 42 hours or stare into a screen. Food is delivered to us. Everybody gets a robot in the house. The robot's smarter than you, so you don't have to worry about it. Yeah. Well, the problem with that world is it's very dangerous for human beings. It's completely antithetical to the way we are as humans. And so my concern is a complete breakdown of the human connection, right? And we know this is possible from what we've seen on the cell phones. So parents have this choice. As AI comes into our world and it becomes a part of all of our lives, we can either just let it happen the way we did with cell phones, which is everybody gets a device and we lose all our kids. Or B, we can be active participants in developing the mental frameworks of our children over the next 5 to 15 to 20 years and create a new group of society that actually understands AI, understands how to work with it. But we haven't lost the ability to think, we haven't lost the ability to imagine, and we haven't lost human connection. Those are the concerns that I have. And that's the whole point of the book, is the framework to help parents understand how the mind works and to help children at the earliest age, starting at 5 years old, start to develop the healthy patterns and habits that become usable skill sets in the world that they're going to inherit.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you are emphasizing the importance of the use of imagination and how it impacts everybody, because like you were saying, everybody's living through these screens. It's really sad. And as you were saying that, I'm kind of analyzing myself, because as an adult, I too have a problem sometimes scrolling for too long because, the cute cats and all this funny stuff that you see on there. And sometimes I notice I struggle with that. And then I think, if I'm struggling, how about the kids? in how do I pull myself away, but you have to be so intentional about it, and everything is habit forming. So that's what I love about your book, right? You're pretty much telling the parents, form the habit right now of implementing play and imagination and fun away from the screens, and which will bring in the critical thinking. And I know I hear a lot people who criticize AI, and they're saying these kids are not going to use their brain cells to think about things and break them down, critical thinking. And I do see a lot of that, sadly. I mean, even sometimes normal tasks, they can't figure things out. And it makes me sad because, like the other day, I was watching this documentary of children in other countries and what they have to do to get to school, sometimes 2-hour travel. And they're crossing rivers and they're doing all these extraordinary things. Where here we cuddle our children and we're like, oh no, don't go play, don't run down the block all by yourself. Be careful, it's dangerous. And that was a norm for me. Like we were always outside, and my parents trusted me to go down several miles on my own because it's just what we did. And today, I think we have kind of exaggerated the idea or the way that we keep our kids safe, to where we are capping them out on the imagination, and that limits them from testing their own capabilities. So in the book, do you give specific tips for parents on how they can implement these ways of introducing play and imagination back into their childhood?
Yes, and I talk about it as what I call a development environment. And the reason I named it that is because we used to think in terms of traditional schools, right? But we know that parents, there's all kinds of breakdowns right now because of the way education has gone, to where we now have a large portion of people homeschooling. We have private schools, charter schools, mini schools, public schools. So it's very difficult to say one thing fits all, but there
Mhm.
is an easy way to solve this. And it's actually kind of very what I would call counterintuitive, right? Which is we actually have to go analog to a certain extent, meaning
Yeah.
take people off of screens and computers in order to make them fantastic once they begin to use the power of AI. And it sounds completely
Mhm.
counterintuitive. But if you introduce screens and technology and just to kids when they're very young and the power of AI kicks in, there is an absolute guarantee they will never learn how to think.
Mhm.
It's, they call it cognitive debt, and they've
Yeah.
already, tons of studies have shown the cognitive debt. There's a big book that just came out regarding how screens are, for the first time in history, making children dumber than the previous generation. I hate to
Mhm.
say that's a
Yeah.
terrible word, but the lack, as you said, the lack ability to think, to think critically, and imagination is the lowest on that totem pole. It has been for a long time, the ability to create, right? So if you think about the reason I put this at the top of the pole, the imagination is the foundation of creativity and innovation.
Yeah.
Both spring from the imagination. You can't have one without the other, right? And but the imagination takes work, like any other skill, sport, anything. And it is something that I've kind of been talking about for a long time. Is we don't do anything with the imagination. We don't teach the imagination. We spend no time with the imagination. And then all of a sudden, when people hit, say, 18 to 25, we begin to say, well, why can't you think outside the box? But we've been putting them in a box for the last 18 years, right, of their life, just focusing them down. We start off brilliantly until they're about 5 years old, and then we box them down for the next 12 years, right? So you have to take the opposite approach. And while so many people are concerned about AI and its outcome, I will tell you it's going to give us one of the greatest gifts, which is the opportunity to shift, right? So we've gone down this path for the last 50 years, increasingly strapping children down, more testing. If you're not testing, you're prepping. When you're not prepping, you're testing. Test, press, test, prep, test.
Yeah.
Test, prep, test, right? Year after year, month after month, this is what we're doing with children. Well, that's part of why imagination and play was thrown out, right, completely, is that we don't have time for imagination and play. But we actually erased in that time frame the ability to imagine, right?
Mhm.
We erased the skill sets of play. And if you were to look around at your friends and people you know as adults, we don't play, right? And
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons, I guess, as a society, we've forgotten how to play.
Mhm.
So there is a lot in the book But what it's really advocating for is a flip of that paradigm that we've been using for the last 20 years, which is the rote learning. It's not as if learning isn't important, right? Because I'm a huge advocate of literacy, and we're terrible with literacy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that should be at the top of our plate because literacy is the foundation for all forms of learning, in my opinion. Yes?
Yeah.
So literacy still has to be at the top. But when it comes to the difficult subjects, math and science, all these things, we actually don't know what the line is anymore. We actually do not know exactly how much of that do we need to know if the robot standing next to us knows 10 times more than we do, right? So it's a difficult line. We only know that if you don't have some foundational knowledge, you won't be able to direct this AI to do anything because you won't have the foundational skills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for me, it's about flipping the entire equation upside down. That 6-8 hours of a child's day should be absolutely filled with play and what I call experiential learning, experience after experience after experience. Maybe 1 to 2 hours in front of a screen. I'm a believer in the power of AI for basically what they've always talked about as personalized learning, which is no more one person standing in front of a class trying to teach the same thing to 30, 40 people. It is a program and a system to where people can learn at their own speed. They can get the help they need if they're falling behind. They can zip past everyone if they want to because they just get it. They just get the science or they get the math, whatever it is. And society will have a way of sorting out which players are meant to be super high-end mathematical geniuses, right? We already do that today. But it won't be everybody forced to swallow the same amount of information over 12 years. And what does that do? It gives us time for play and the experiential piece, right? And that's the flip that parents should do at home if you're homeschooling, that we should be fighting for in our schools, whether it's a micro school or a public school. Within that, basically, I take all parents through a system that highly develops imagination and highly develops creativity, right? And I believe in 2 phases in this model. One is the ages of 5 to 10. From 5 to 10, big believer in 2 big movements. Pulling kids away from screens the majority of the day. I'm a big fan of the no phones before, no cell phones before 14, no social media before 16. It's the whole Jonathan Haidt model. I'm a big fan of that, right? So you remove that type of influence. That requires a lot of discipline from the parents, right?
Yes.
A lot of discipline. And I talk about this in the book that I think the big crime in the last 20 years was that no one was really talking about the fact that all of these things were developed on addiction models. They literally were designed to addict you based on the science of addiction. I don't understand, like we used to sue tobacco companies for this type of thing, right? And you're starting to see that come out. You're starting to see lawsuits and all kinds of things. But parents have to be the first to recognize that, and parents have to be the first to put their cell phone down. We're all guilty, right? And it's not all day, but when your child is present, you have to have some discipline, or your child will never have the discipline, right? I talk about the dinner table, cell phone has to go down. I talk about bedtime. The greatest thing in the world you can do for children from 5 to 10 is bedtime stories.
Story times, yeah.
Climb in bed with them and have a bedtime conversation, read a book together, explore the world together. It's the greatest power you have. And all of us who have ever been parents, we all know the same thing. There is an age, starts in adolescence, which is the toughest phase, where children begin to move away from you. And it's a natural process of life. And we actually want our children to start moving away from us to be successful as adults in the world. So we only have a few years when they really will allow us to climb into bed and read a story, right? So why would we give that up, right? So there's a lot of practical tips in the book on what the day should look like and what are the tasks and things that you can do to drive imagination, drive creativity, and then agency and human connection, right? So the second phase that I was talking about is the first phase from 5 to 10 is heavy, heavy, heavy on imagination, creativity, experiences, and connection with other children and parents and adults. The second phase is when they hit 11 or 12 and they start moving into the tougher phase of life, adolescence. That becomes all about agency, which is learning how to accomplish the things you want to accomplish. It should be high focus. They call it a laser, like a laser beam, or what they call a shape charge, which is focusing all of that fantastic creative energy and start to pull it in to actually accomplish things. They should be in a heavy phase of learning accomplishment for self-esteem, for agency, all these things as they enter the teenage years. And within that, we need to do a heavy dose, a heavy, heavy dose of maintaining moral codes, compassion, and
Mhm.
human connection,
Mhm.
right? Those are really the two big phases I see. And I see children in the future because the job is not the goal. The second phase is also where we're really helping them figure out who they are, because that will be the presence with which they engage the world. It's no longer just a job, right? It's no longer, I am a lawyer, I am a doctor. It is, hey, what value am I going to introduce to the world? And we have to help them find that because it's not an easy thing to do, especially
Mhm.
when they're young. It takes many of us 30, 40 years to figure out who we are.
Yeah.
So they will be extra challenged, and they will be challenged in the way you and I are talking about against depression, against suicide, against anxiety. Because imagine being released into the world at 20 years old and not having any of these things mentally solved. Like you're not really sure about the world, you're not really sure what your purpose is, you're not really sure what your value is, but you don't have any solid foundations. So the easiest thing in the world is to turn to a device and lock away your mind for the next 10 hours. That's the battle we fight as parents and as a society for the next 15 years.
I think that your book is very it has very fundamental things that we know of, but I think it's nowadays something that we need to be reminded of because just what you said earlier about story time, as you were saying that, I'm thinking, how many parents have I heard lately talk about story time with their kids? And I actually haven't in a long time. I'm so fortunate that I got to do that with my kids. I loved it. Now let's shift a little bit and let's talk about your outfit and how you work with the kids at the schools.
Yeah, so as a children's author, people ask me this question, and certain people obviously know me outside of the costume, right? And even launching this book, a lot of people ask whether I wanted to launch it as my character or as a normal person, right? And I chose to launch it as the character, and there's a reason for it. There's a guy, I think his name is Todd Hartman. I talk about in the book, and so he talks about a psychological trick, basically. And he is actually talking about this for children, and it's one I believe in. And he talks about putting on the Superman cape, right? Other people in self-help, they talk about it in the terms of modeling, right? Like modeling people you respect, right? When Hartman talks about it in terms of the Superman cape, he talks about training children to basically take on a persona to attack the world, right? Or pick up a big challenge, right? And his message I love, and he basically said, put on a cape and imagine yourself being able to do everything you want to do with either this task or in the world. What do you look like? What do you feel like? What is this thing that you want to become? And I want you to imagine that every time you put the cape on, you become that person,
Mhm.
right? So the character for me is the same. It's all founded in my little blue hat. And I talk about the blue hat, right? Why the blue hat? Why do I put this blue hat on? For me, first and foremost, there is something that happens when I put the blue hat on that is about remembering that I'm here for children, right? That the very purpose of putting this hat on is to be in front of children, to be an influence on children. And that's a very high responsibility. It's a very special thing. So for me, I wanted to create a full transformation mentally, right? That whenever I had this blue hat on, I'm a different person, right? And what is it that I wanted to be more than anything? Well, I love storytelling. So I wanted to be the greatest storyteller on the planet. That was the first, right? But I also am really big into imagination and play. And part of imagination is to live imagination. And this is where, 4 and 5 year olds have always been geniuses at imagination. They're not afraid to play, right? There are so many tricks I've done in the years in front of children. I'll give you an example. You tell children that you can fly,
Mhm.
they don't say no.
Mhm.
Now, as they get older, remember what I'm saying, five, six,
Mhm.
seven, they start to say no. You start to realize the difference. But you know what they say at 4 and 5? show me. It starts with belief, right? And my favorite trick is to say, I can't. There's too many adults around.
Mm.
Do you know
Oh,
what happens if I see that child again?
mhm.
They
That was
say,
good.
you said you were going to show me,
Uh-huh. That's
right?
beautiful.
It's about belief, right? And
Uh-huh.
that's the major gift we lose. The major gift we lose is the ability to imagine and play within ourselves, right? To be part of it.
Mhm.
So the commitment I made to myself is when this blue hat is on, I am 100% in. I am all imagination. I want to be a great storyteller. I want to be a great influencer, but at the same time, I want children to understand the imagination when they see me, when they hear me, they are living the imagination. That's what this was all about for me.
So you go to schools and you hold like assemblies or plays, or
Yeah,
what do
so
you do?
what we do, like, so we're actually going to start working hard on some new models. But originally, what we did was we just went to schools to entertain, right? That was the foundation of it. Is I was, releasing children's books. I wanted to tell, children about the books, families about the book, excuse me, schools. So we just started going to schools, and we did a lot of hard work, just calling schools and inviting ourselves and saying, "I'd love to come to your school." And the passion changed. I'll tell you a story. I was at a school in a very far um, district of Brooklyn, New York, and I had been invited up there by a teacher who I still respect to this day. It was a school with absolutely no money, and this is part of the story with the Imagination Project. Absolutely no money. And what I said to her, she said, "Can I get you up here?" And I said, "Well, if I'll come. I love coming. I'll come if you can just handle the flight in the hotel, right? Like I really can't afford to just fly myself up there and I'm not there yet, right? Not this big
Mhm.
superstar." I said, "Would you mind?" And she did whatever she did bake sales and all kinds of things in this little school to basically come up with that money. So for me, the first thing was that I ended up giving away all my books there. Like I gave away all the books to something like 400 kids in the school or 300 in the total school, right? It was a very small school in Brooklyn. And the people there were basically from parts of Central and South America were up there, right? It was half of them didn't even speak English. But the teacher said to me when I was standing there, she said, "Thank you for coming." And I said, "Oh, you're welcome." Right? I didn't even think twice about it.
Mhm.
She said, "No, really, thank you for coming." She said, "No one ever comes here."
Mm.
So I was personally heartbroken. I was
Mhm.
so heartbroken. And I had already been going through this thing where I was seeing the different schools, right? I was going into schools with no resource. What ended up happening to us as a progression is every time I landed in a school with no resources, I ended up giving away all my books. We were supposed to be there, right, to try and, get book sales going and all these
Right.
things. And it just became a passion for us. And so I became very serious about the idea of not leaving children behind, right?
Right.
And very serious about the idea that um, in many ways, a children who comes from a poor environment deserves every bit a good life as someone who came from a great environment. And it's heartbreaking to me, or infuriating actually to me, the idea that just from the beginning they're off to a bad start, right? And no
Yeah.
one's, and I will tell you, life is very hard. Life
Mhm.
is not very encouraging, is the way I would put it, right? So life, I call it you will encounter a series of naysayers and doubters. Doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what dream you have. This is a part of life. So, like when we talk about frameworks, if you come from the frameworks where people talk about self-esteem and people talk about empowerment, you're much more ready to handle all the disappointment that's going to come at you in life. But if your life starts in disappointment and the world around you is disappointment, you're not prepared for every time someone is going to tell you no, is going to disappoint you, is going to say you're not like, yes, but not you. That's the
Right.
worst message in the world, right?
Right.
Yes, but not you.
Mm.
That's the most terrible message to tell anybody in life, but children especially,
Yeah.
right? So we spent a lot of time in schools like that. And that's
Mhm.
our goal. The Imagination Project, the entire purpose of the Imagination Project is to go to the schools. And in general, we do full events where we go in and I'll ask them what they want me to do. I love we generally are in the cafeteria or gym with 500 kids or 300 kids, whatever they want. We do multiple sessions. We try and change it up for the little ones to the big ones. Our entire presence there on that day is to tell children they have the power to dream, that they are important in that world, and that they are capable of anything. That is the mission. They are capable. And in that presence, we give away all of our books because I believe so much in literacy. And my books in general, they go from storytelling to empowerment.
Mhm.
My picture books tend to be very imaginative, but the subconscious story is dreaming, empowerment, imagination. That's what most of my books are about. And so, we're trying to, I don't know how to say a better word, indoctrinate them with empowerment,
Yeah, yeah.
indoctrinate them with belief systems, with dreaming. That's what I want when I go to a school. What we're going to do now that we've basically written this book is we want to add an entire paradigm to this, which is the teachers, right?
Yes.
Because most teachers in two things, they haven't been trained in a lot of these techniques that I'm writing about, number one. But they also haven't necessarily been allowed to focus much of their time on experiential learning or the types of things. So for me, it's a mission, right? To get across the country, get across the world, spread the message that there is a new paradigm we have to start following and help everyone make this transition from rote learning, sitting down, focused on testing and prep, to wild, fun, imagination, play, and experiential learning. That's what I want to help everybody with.
I hope that you are able to do that. Thank you, first of all, for going to that, especially that one school where the teacher was like, "No, really, thank you." Because I know what it's like to feel like the invisible kid because you're poor. It's an awful feeling because as a kid, you have no control. If you're born into a wealthy family, a middle
Never
class
their fault.
family, you know,
Yeah.
and it's crazy because you automatically, because society and you give yourself the value without anybody actually telling you you don't have value. It's just that the rhetoric and everything that you hear around tells you, oh, you're poor, therefore you don't matter.
Yeah.
And that's
And the opposite
horrible.
side of the street, if
Mhm.
you will visit the affluent, it's quite the opposite,
Oh
right?
yeah. Mhm.
They're told from the very beginning, um, the mindset is you are capable, you're going to be educated, you're going to have a fantastic career. Everything is just the opposite in the best environments.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I remember growing up because I wasn't super, super poor, but I remember struggling here. And then, I mean, coming from a third world country, Nicaragua, where we had an outhouse, and coming to the US, flushing water, toilet, all of that. And we're like, oh, drywall, we're like, this is new. And I remember hearing that, like, oh, you're just a poor person. Like, oh, you don't
Mm.
matter. And then I think about my children now. I was like, I don't ever want you to think that way. Now, like you have privilege. I mean, you're not super wealthy. You're not like Bill Gates type of wealthy or anything like that. But you don't have to worry about not being able to go to college or own a car or well, a house. It gives a sense of security that, hey, you will accomplish this one day. You'll
Yes.
have to do a little bit of hard work. Some people
Yes.
don't have to do some work at
Yeah.
all because they have
Yeah.
it that good. But yeah, you make such a great point that some kids just look at because I mean the things that I have accomplished. I'm amazed because as a kid, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to own a home. Probably not. I'll probably be like everybody else, renting an apartment for the rest of my life. Thank goodness that's not what it turned out like. But it was people like yourself who said something or came and showed me something that made me realize, you know what? I'm meant for something different. I'm not meant to do what society says I'm supposed to do. I remember being told you're going to be a statistic. Your
Yes.
kids, yeah, and I'm the oldest of six kids, five girls. So the story was you're probably going to end up young and pregnant on
Mm.
welfare.
Yeah.
And I was like,
It's a
no, I
terrible,
am not going to. I'm
it's
not
such
going
a
to do that.
it's a terrible message, right? It's a terrible message.
Mhm.
And I used to tell my team a lot because we've done a lot of time on the road, let's say, uncompensated is the way I might put it. And I've always said, we've had a lot of good, mostly all fantastic experience, but every once in a while we go into a school that's very disappointing. And it's very disappointing for us when basically we see that the administration is not that interested,
I was just gonna touch on that.
right?
Yes.
So I have been in schools, I will say, and I will tell you what the most terrible thing is. Some of the schools where that's the case are the schools where the children are the most at risk. That's
Hmm.
the craziest thing, right? So you have a bunch of children at risk, and for whatever reason, the administration, some of the teachers, they just are disengaged. I don't know if they're beat down, whatever.
Hmm.
But I have been in schools where we're doing a fantastic, everybody's wild and having fun, and the majority of teachers are in the back on their cell phones. And I always see this, and I get upset because I think that's not what we're doing for these kids, right?
Right.
But I say to my team a lot, part of my belief system is if I walk in and there's 300 kids in a cafeteria and I make one believe for the rest of his life or her life, then it was worth that day. It was
Hmm.
worth going into that school. It was worth every minute that we put into it. It was worth the 500 books that we gave away. If one child walks away believing in A, dreams, that they should be dreaming about big things, and B, that there is a path for them, that there is a way that they can do this, and it's them, it's not someone else, then it was worth the trip for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you are doing this. And I know there's a lot of other people too, but the way that you're doing it is so unique. I'm telling you, when I opened up your two YouTube pages, your channels, I was like the little kid came out and I was so elated. I was just like so excited. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And people, if you're listening, please go check out the YouTube. The YouTube links will be included in the show notes. But what you have created is exciting. It's so refreshing. I love that you dress up in this character, which of course speaks to kids and even parents and teachers. And by the way, so is your organization a nonprofit? Can people donate, or is it a for-profit where people can still donate?
Yeah, so the way I would describe it is we're probably trying to do too much at once, right? So I'm passionate about two things in that regard. I'm passionate about the parents. Our goal is to build the most trusted brand on the planet. That's what we want. The way, Disney used to be, let's say, like where everybody thought Disney was the greatest brand ever created. Um, we want parents to understand that we are safe, educational, and fun, and will protect their children, you know? And a lot of what I'm doing is on the parent side right now. This book is helping parents adjust to the new world. The other side of my equation are the kids. Like I'm such a believer in, first of all, I'm an entertainer and a writer, so I like to entertain children. I get juice from it like there's nothing tomorrow when kids are laughing. It's my favorite thing on the planet. So we're building a brand that's for kids, right? So those are the things that you see. And the for kids, the YouTube channel, that type of stuff is really designed to be more of a for-profit type thing, right? Like you would any children's brand. But we have long established the nonprofit is now 10 years old, and the nonprofit is called the Imagination Project. And yes, I would love people to go to theimaginationproject.org. And I'm always looking for donors to help us expand what we're doing. We're looking for partnerships with some of the biggest corporations in the world right now because the timing, I think, is so urgent, right? To
Yeah.
deliver these messages and to get into these schools. And as we're talking about it's also things are going to change. So things like mental crisis and when you think about confidence and you think about resilience and all these things, it's going to be harder if you don't train this in now before they start graduating and not having, there's no direct route. They have to learn how to make it up themselves. They have to learn how to be agile. They have to be adaptable. The world will be fast and furious. So it's all about adapting to this world. And that's kind of what the Imagination Project is about. And I'm going to be establishing, by the way, I just clicked this on. We're going to do a new channel on YouTube called Raising Dreamers. And
Okay.
the purpose of that channel is going to be for the parents, right?
Okay.
It's going to be as much information. It will be at first a lot of breakdowns of the book and the techniques and the things that we're talking about. And it will turn into a lot more content related to, okay, so my child is 7. What am I supposed to be doing for a 7-year-old that's going to teach him imagination or
Mhm.
creativity? Or what is a project that you would give a 7-year-old that challenges them, builds in resilience, and makes them struggle appropriately for their age group to build resilience and to build alternative thinking? Like, what does that look like when you're 7? What does it look like when you're 9? So the Raising Dreamers channel will be built specifically to help parents along this route.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that. And I want to mention your YouTube channel that just blew me away. Wild Parents and Teachers.
So
Um,
with Wild Parents and Teachers, we're going to change to Raising Dreamers. That's the one I'm
okay.
changing. It will
All
be
right.
called Raising Dreamers just to match this whole thing, right? We're out
Right.
here talking about it every day. And then the
Mm-hmm.
regular YouTube channel is just Wylde Scott at Wylde Scott
Oscar.
Videos, which is the
Yeah.
children's channel. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just so impressive. Like the videos that you put in there, I was like, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. And I mean nowadays you have to have that, right? You have that
Yeah.
the beauty, the shining little bells and whistles that people say to attract people to come in and digest the content. And
Yeah.
you're doing such a great job. I hope that a lot of parents check it out and the kids too because it's incredible and I hope that they donate as well. Do you have any special events coming up that we should know of?
We don't right now, though. Unfortunately, a lot of our time is being dedicated to the book. I
Hmm.
am desperately trying to find time for two things at all times, which is one, getting back into schools. My favorite thing is to be in the schools, so we're desperately. But what I would say is, if anybody sees this, contact the Imagination Project, contact Wild Scott about coming into schools,
Hmm.
because I will tell you guys that part of the relationship is the more you have schools lined up, the more sponsors and people want to talk to you about this thing. And I'm not a nonprofit guy by trade. It's not an easy thing to go ask for money or raise money.
Hmm.
But I can tell you that there's a symbiosis. The more we get out there, the more we can do, the more schools we see, the more it generates people that are willing and interested in supporting us. So it's one of the treadmills I'm trying to get going fast, which is a lot of schools and hopefully pick up donors.
When
Um,
when you're reaching out to schools, who is the decision maker? Is it the principals? Is it the superintendent?
It
Who can
is
we
still
refer
all
you
over
to?
it is so all over the place. It's
Mhm.
crazy. So we have spent a lot of time contacting schools directly.
Mhm.
Um, like almost any type of enterprise, it's all about what they call a champion, right?
Okay.
Who's your champion?
Right.
For me, it's been librarians, it's been teachers, and every once in a while, like a principal who finds out about us.
Mhm.
But it's generally teachers and librarians who are our champions, and we work together to try and convince the school itself that, we should do an event at their school. It's much harder at the higher levels. It's something that I'm trying to penetrate, right? It's a wall I'm trying to break. And I hope the book will help me do that, which is to say, we can do this across all of your elementary schools, as an example. We can do this if you wanted to just pick your Title I schools as an example, the schools that are underserved. We can create a battle plan for all the Title I schools, and it can be both events for the children to basically ignite their imaginations, plus the teachers.
Mhm.
Plus, we can do a full day with the teachers and really explore with them what it means to create an imaginative environment, right?
You're right.
So we do want to work with superintendents. They're generally the toughest. They're very busy, I understand,
Mhm.
and they have a lot. Nothing's fun in education at this point, right? When it comes
Right.
to that level, because everybody's unhappy and everybody's arguing over what education should look like.
Right.
But they're very important people, and the more administrators and superintendents we can get on board, the happier I would be.
Okay. And where can people get your book?
So the book is on Amazon or just about Barnes and Noble, anything that's online, generally 20 different sites. And you just look up Raising Dreamers on Amazon as an example. And or if you prefer not to use Amazon, there's Barnes and Noble everywhere else. It's also available.
Wonderful. Well, this has been an incredible conversation. I wish you the best, and I will definitely do my part, at least referring you and sending notifications out to all my subscribers about what it is you do. Thank you so much for the work. And this comes from like little Dali, who once did not feel worthy of like this would have been, oh my gosh, I'm telling you, you remind me. Let me just share this story. I was in Nicaragua, of course, very poor country. And I remember that there was a circus coming to the school, and I did not have money. My parents did not have money, and I really wanted to go. And it was like a special thing because nobody ever came to our school, just like what you did with that school. So I decided to make my own tickets. And I had like
That's
my
funny.
friends do their own too. We had like we huddled and we took somebody's real ticket and we copied it. And we were like, oh, they're not going to be able to tell. And I'll never forget the look of the administrators as we walked in and handed over our our DIY tickets they looked at us and they probably felt pity, but they were like, go on in. And they let us
Nice.
in.
Do you know what's so funny about that story is how natural we are at certain things, right? And when you think about the imagination it took you to like we're gonna go make our own tickets,
Hmm.
the agency and the courage, right, to just
Yeah.
walk over there and hand them your tickets. And those are such natural gifts we all have, and we give it all away, right? We
Yeah.
basically take all it away. And
Hmm.
yeah, but what a great story.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you again for everything that you're doing. And thank you for sharing your story here with us at the Dali Talks podcast.
Thank you, Dali.
Hey, did you like that episode? I have an ask. Would you mind leaving me a review? It would really help me improve this podcast so that you can come back and keep listening. Also, don't forget to check me out at DaliTalks.com and follow me on social media at DaliTalks. Until next time.